Hello, everyone. Father Marshall Shelley here, coming to you from St. Peter's Episcopal Church. It has been a while since I've done one of these weekly updates. Sorry about that. I've been traveling. I was on pilgrimage in Scotland and England with my colleague group for our 20th anniversary year. It was a great experience, and I'll share a little bit of that in the context of this message. As well, it is great to be back at St. Peter's, moving into June in our summer months, where we don't so much stop the program year as we just shift gears. There's a lot going on in the life of Christ. I look forward to sharing that with you. And of course, we'll get to that. But first, the word of the week. The word for the week is inclusion. The idea that we are called to be inclusive as a church can sound like a charged political statement. But in the end, we have to understand that when it comes to the gospel of Christ, as Jesus himself spoke of it, he actually commanded us. He commended us to the work of going into the world and proclaiming the gospel to all peoples, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Christ himself did not draw distinctions in a time when everything was distinct. If you were Jewish, if you were Zoroastrian, if you were Persian, if you were Roman, if you were Syrophoenician, if you were from Sychar or from Sidon or from Egypt or from any particular city-state, you would be defined as that over and against anything else. Understanding that your own humanity was defined by the silo in which you fell. Jesus himself made the effort to cross the boundaries and speak to people and be with people and be in contact with people for whom his own tradition said, do not touch. Whether it was a leper, whether it was someone with a disease, whether it was someone needing healing on the synagogue or in the synagogue on a Sabbath, whether it was a woman or a tax collector or a sinner or a Roman, he charged us by his own example of behavior to understand that we are called to primarily and firstly be in relationship with the other human being who is directly in front of us. To understand, as we do in the Episcopal Church in our baptismal covenant, that we are called to seek and serve Christ in all persons, loving our neighbors as ourselves, and as well to understand that we are called to strive for justice and peace and to respect the dignity of every human being. Inclusion means that we make opportunities happen for people, that they have access, that they have the opportunity to engage in relationship across the boundaries that usually serve to divide and separate. We had that experience traveling to Great Britain for our pilgrimage. I got into the plane in Newark, landed in Scotland, and the culture changed immediately. I was no longer in my home country, in my home county, in my home context. I was in a different country. I had to show a passport in order to gain entrance to that country. I had to tell them why I was there and what my intentions were, as I was intending to meet some friends there, travel, and then walk Hadrian's Wall. They wished me well and sent me on my way, but there was a gate that I had to pass through to be accepted and welcomed in that space. And I had to prove myself safe and worthy to enter. On top of that, we landed in Edinburgh, Scotland. We had to navigate a transportation system, a place to stay and keep our things, a way to find food and interact with people in Scotland, which was a different culture. Even though we are speaking a common language that is English, the inflection, the dialect, the accents were all different. And because I had lived in Scotland for a time when I was in college, I had the opportunity to translate for some of my friends when Scottish people would ask them what they would like for breakfast or for dinner or where they would like to go, or to translate directions so we could figure out where we were going and how to get there. Of course, we were there for a short time and had to travel to England. So we went from Scotland to England, and not just England, but two different regions of England, and two different cultures in two different contexts, two different sets of accents and dialects. We first went to Cumbria, which is on the western side of England, and we experienced the culture there, the accents there, the translation necessities there. And then as we walked across the country, we wound up in Northumbria and found ourselves there. Two different cultures. And to make a sort of sit with a punchline, you've probably heard of the idea of full English breakfast, or a full Scottish breakfast, or a full whatever breakfast in Great Britain. Understand that there's a very specific large breakfast that is served. That is bacon and sausage and black pudding and fried eggs, a broiled tomato, mushrooms, baked beans, toast. Sometimes you'll get a potato cake or a hash brown with it. But always it is an absolute avalanche of food. The thing that's interesting about it is that when you're in Scotland, you get a full Scottish. When you're in Cumbria, you get a full Cumbrian breakfast. And when you're in Northumbria, you get a full Northumbrian breakfast. I'm sure if you go south of that border in any of the counties, you'll find that that full breakfast, which has essentially the same elements within it, has a different name. And of course, the person from Northumbria will say, really, the full Northumbrian breakfast is the one you want. The full Cumbrian one is different because they make their black pudding in an entirely different way. And if you go to Scotland, of course, the sausages are different as well. Drawing distinction about the same thing. This is the great challenge for us as human beings, that we can find ways to create differences when we're really experiencing the kind of harmonies and commonalities that should draw us together, even over breakfast. When I was a young man going to seminary, I wound up in the neighborhood of Chelsea, which is just north of Greenwich Village, where my seminary was. And it was a custom for us in the seminary, after we'd gone to church on Sunday, to go out to get something to eat, commonly referred to as brunch. Well, in Chelsea, which was a bastion of LGBTQIA acceptance and culture in the midst of the really darkest days of the AIDS epidemic, in which there was a brokenness and a terror that was woven into the idea that people could also be in community. It was really kind of both a terrifying and also a beautiful time to be with folks. I was out to brunch one day with some friends of mine, and as I was looking around, seeing on a beautiful spring day this incredible tapestry of humanity and expressing itself, I had a chance to look over at another table, and I saw a young man who was in very Midwestern clothes. Most other folks were much more dramatically dressed and finely dressed in their own costumes, but he was clearly plainly dressed, young man, looking slightly confused, but also looking around him with wonder and awe, realizing that I was looking at someone who, for the very first time in his life perhaps, had found his tribe, had found a place where all of the craziness that he had in his heart and in his mind, all of the wonder, all of the joy that he had been holding so close to himself because he could not express himself fully where he was from, was being shown in public and exhibited on the streets so that people could celebrate and enjoy. What a gift. What a grace. The ability to find community in commonality, but also to find that sense of being common together in community, is really the heart's core of inclusion. It doesn't require us to surrender all of our values, all of our identity, but what it requires of us is to be open and accepting of where another person finds themselves, where they find themselves growing and learning and being more fully known to themselves and before God. It isn't so much about trying to control a behavior as trying to express a self. And that is really why we're here in this Pride Month. That's why we're here in this church, to understand ourselves as a gospel community that is all about welcoming home those who are seeking and trying to find a tribe in which they are accepted, they are loved, they are appreciated, they are honored for the created and beloved thing of Christ that they are called to be. It was an amazing experience walking across Britain on Hadrian's Wall, and in the coming weeks I'll share little snippets and stories with that. But I wanted to share that little anecdote about breakfast and about one particular brunch that changed the way I saw the world, so that I could see the beloved of God even when the world told me that it wasn't there, and I was transformed. I hope you are too in this day. I hope you find ways to find the Christ in the other. I hope you are able to participate in the life of Christ as we are expressing it here at St. Peter's. Of course, we have the daily office, morning and evening prayer, 9 and 5 on Monday through Thursday. Sunday mornings, of course, our worship is moved to our summertime at 9 a.m. Please do join us for that on Sundays. 12 noon on Wednesdays, of course, you can continue to participate in the Eucharist. You can always find us online and participate in the way we express ourselves, both in terms of worship and in service. And of course, I urge you to like and subscribe and follow us. This coming Saturday, we have the women's breakfast at 9 a.m. in the parish hall. And then in the church, we have our grief group following about 10:30. And of course, the shop is open. Alice's Cup feeding ministry is open, as well as our Mini Mart food pantry and community supper on Wednesday evenings. For now, dearly beloved ones of God, beloved of Christ, take care and God bless. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.